Welcome back to the channel. My name is Gian from Hospitality, and today we're going to talk about Airbnb reviews. So let me give you a brief overview of what reviews are, and how are they used in marketplaces, specifically two-sided marketplaces, and basically that's what we're going to talk about here on this video. All right, so what are two-sided marketplaces? Because some of the misconceptions that I run into a lot of the times is that people refer to the actual accommodations within the Airbnb marketplace or platform. They refer to them as Airbnbs, which this is technically not correct. You know, these are lodging or accommodations or units or houses or listings, whatever you want to call them, that are provided by a seller, or in this case, a host. You know, this is a person that has, or the ownership, the management title, the lease, or whatever on the particular unit, the housing, the dwelling, whatever, and places it on the marketplace just like they could place it on any other marketplace, like to name a few: Craigslist, VRBO, Booking.com has opened a vacation rental section, so that's another marketplace. So just like they could have placed it in any other marketplace, they place it on Airbnb. You know, Airbnb has the most brand strength. So in terms of vacation rentals and short-term rentals, like living like local, sharing spaces and that kind of thing. So probably that's the reason why these people have set it up in such a way in their mind where it's like, oh, I'm staying at an Airbnb, which is, technically. So now going into two-sided marketplaces. So how do these places work? So these places are basically the ground in which two sides of a transaction live. So Airbnb is the middle ground or middle place, or the intermediary between the host selling their nights in their accommodation and the guest looking for a place to stay in whatever place, where it is available. So essentially, Airbnb just acts as the conduit, the connector between these two parties, and then, it mediates a transaction, and it mediates any conflict or interaction or whatever thing may happen between these two parties. So essentially, in very basic terms, that's what a two-sided marketplace is. It's just an intermediary between two parties, and then these whatever these two parties do after the transaction is finished, it's goes on to whatever party to settle things out between them. So why are these marketplaces so relevant? In the recent years. So in the early 2000s, till late 2000s. And even, in the last part of the 20th century, a lot of these marketplaces came up, trying to connect via the internet, which the internet was still a very new thing. It was trying to connect, multiple people, be it, social media was starting out, in some sense, marketplaces trying to sell things through the internet. For example, books that, this giant online retailer that is still a two-sided marketplace, but it started selling books in the 90s. And you also have the other pretty giant marketplace, which was more relevant in the early to late 2000s and has lost a little bit of relevance, but it's still pretty strong. Just buying secondhand things and that sort of thing. So this model is very relevant because it's the ultimate connector once the brand is strong enough to kind of like sustain itself and create an essence of trust in the mind of the consumer. So trust is a very, very, very important thing when approaching a marketplace. I even dabbled into trying to create a marketplace, but oftentimes most marketplaces don't get off the ground because trust isn't established at the beginning, or you don't have enough capital to keep it going until you build up that trust. So essentially, those are some of the pitfalls of marketplaces. But moving on. So what are the strengths of this particular model? So basically, the trust. This thing that you go into the retailer and you're going to find something amazing for an amazing price and something that hopefully other people have tried before. So if other people have tried it before, you can sort of rest assured that if you try it, it'll probably pan out pretty well and you won't be wasting your money. Another strength that marketplaces have is that they oftentimes work like sort of a department store. You know that a department store has multiple departments or multiple product categories that they can offer at any given time. So if a particular product category does not do well in that point in time and it loses strength on that side, it has other departments or other product categories that it can back itself on, or lean into to kind of like supplement the losses and the loss of trust that it had on that other product category. So that's another strength. So as we said, trust is extremely important in a two-sided marketplace. And in particular, this is why reviews were invented. Reviews were invented specifically because it was pretty hard for people to wrap their head around whatever they were buying that wasn't immediately in their hands with them inspecting it at the moment before purchase. So reviews were invented in a sense so that people could read into the prior experiences of other consumers and individuals and then just make a little bit more informed decisions in their head, saying, oh, if this previous experience from this previous person was a positive one, so most likely my experience will also be positive if I purchase this product. So essentially that's why reviews were invented. But there are other ways, that marketplaces or social media in a sense, which also work as connectors, use to kind of like create this positive or negative feedback loop to kind of like just to cater the content for it to be the highest value. So for example, there are likes, upvotes, shares, engagements. So that sort of thing are also things that can measure the amount of value that this particular product, post, publication, whatever was shared has given to the marketplace. All right, so enough of that. So let's go into Airbnb in particular. So how does the review process work in Airbnb? So the review process is essentially when you end the reservation, both the host and the guest have 14 days to submit a review. So the host submits a review on their experience hosting this guest, and the guest submits a review for their experience, just staying in this place and, handling with the host and how was everything, right? How was their experience? So basically, there's this 14-day period, and if you don't review in these 14 days, no review is publicated, and that's that. So if within that 14-day period, one of the two parties leaves a review, but the other does not, at the end of the 14 days, the one that published the review, whichever side it was, if it was the host or if it was the guest, that one gets published at the end of the 14 days. And the other side that did not write any reviews gets to move on without providing their review. So either a guest can leave a review and the host doesn't, or the host can leave a review and the guest doesn't, or both parties can leave their reviews, or none of the parties leave reviews. So essentially, those are the four basic configurations of review. The review process within Airbnb. So, what are the factors that go into reviewing a property on Airbnb? So this is entirely on the guest side. We're going into the mind of a guest. Me also have been a guest. With me also have been a guest, I can tell you some of the things that go into a review process from the guest perspective, and also me just looking at all of the reviews that I've had over the years, being a host and also the operations manager of a multinational hospitality company. I can spot sort of the multiple patterns that go into making a review. So essentially, it's the interpretation, guest perception, and particular circumstances that go into the experience that influence this review to then be whatever it comes out of. So the interpretation, how the guest interpreted every interaction, how the guest interpreted your presentation of the unit, how the guest interpreted the communications, how the guest interpreted its surroundings, the neighborhood, the experiences they had in the neighborhood per se. So this all goes into kind of like their thought process of getting to the review of, oh, this was a mostly positive or mostly negative experience. So next we go guest perception. So sometimes we encounter that guests oftentimes use their own prior experiences to kind of like judge the experiences that they are having at the moment. So for example, if they come from a different place, background, type of neighborhood, if you know what I mean, right? Then they encounter that wherever they're staying, it's not particularly the same as what they're used to. They will catalog that as a negative experience because it's not what I'm used to. And if the guest doesn't have the particular ability to kind of like just shatter those expectations and understand that they're in a different place, understand that, you know, this is how everything is in this particular place, then if they don't have the ability to shatter those expectations, they'll probably catalog that as a negative experience. And the third one, which was particular circumstances. So, you know, things happen within the property. So maybe you had the bad luck that an air conditioner, you know, went off and it's not coming back on and it's pretty hot. So that's a particular circumstance, and you're having a lot of trouble getting your tech out to fix it because you have a smaller operation and you can't get a dedicated tech or a dedicated contract with a company for a tech, or whatever the circumstances may be within that particular day. So if that happens, that particular circumstance will influence entirely the review process. So if for example, it's something out of your control, the guest will still think that this is completely your fault. And they will provide that feedback in the review. You know, and it would be up to the next guest that reads that review to also interpret that, oh wait, this wasn't in the control of the host at all. So probably it was just that he had a negative experience and he expressed it in the review, but not necessarily that the host was at fault. You know, don't get me wrong, you know, there are other particular circumstances that, you know, hosts sometimes, there's everything in this particular melting pot, right? There's things from very attentive hosts, very great hosts, very good hosts, and, you know, there are not so good hosts, there are bad hosts, there are people that, you know, treat it like just regular rentals, and you know, you get into your apartment and, you know, you're there, good luck, right? So there's a little bit of everything in the host spectrum and also in the guest spectrum. So keep that in mind when, you know, just looking out for these things and within the review process. So naturally, the next question would be, so can reviews then be trustworthy? So this is grab this with a grain of salt. I would say that reviews are definitely necessary and helpful, but not particularly trustworthy. And here's what I mean. Right before you say, oh, you're knocking off the review process or you don't want people to review your properties. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm trying to say is that people have different perceptions and interpretations for everything, you know, for a multiplicity of things. And what may be a very negative experience to you may probably or may not be a negative experience to me, right? I might be a little bit more adaptable as a human than the other person that just stayed there and experienced the same thing. And that's what I'm trying to go for, right? When you're reading a review, use your own judgment to kind of like interpret if whatever this person is saying in the review, is it actually something that I'm going to also experience more or less in the same way? Would I feel the same way? Or is it something that I wouldn't really care about? Right? For example, at one time I read a review in one of my clients, one of my prior clients, report that there was an instance where the plates didn't match, right? So they made the mistake of placing on the fly, right? Because there was a few broken plates, and on the fly, because they had a same day check-in and they couldn't find the same color plates, or the same design plates, basically they just bought plain white plates and placed them there for them to kind of like just supplement that stay, and for them to have the adequate number of plates. And then, for the next reservation, let's look for the design. This is the design for them to match, and then, to get that same parity. So in that particular reservation where the plates didn't match, the guest was outraged. That, wow, you are not paying attention to the details. These plates don't match. What else is wrong, and whatever, and all those things. And you naturally, as you can naturally assume, all of these little things went into the review. So from plates not matching, it went to other things like, oh, I pulled out your refrigerator and it was dusty in the back. I looked under your cabinets and your cabinets are dusty as well. So it's like those are things that are needed. They need to be taken care of, definitely. But it's something that merits a deeper clean, probably a monthly or a month and a half type of deep clean. You won't pull out your refrigerator every turnover if you have a giant turnover rate. So, for example, if you're getting check out and check in on the same day, you probably won't have time every reservation to just pull out the refrigerator and dust in the back and just clean everything in the back. It probably needs a block day to do that deep clean in that particular property, and then just have that ready for the next time you do a deep clean. So point is, this minor inconvenience or incident, or whatever situation you want to set up as it wouldn't have been a big deal for me. It's like I still have plates, right? So that's what I'm trying to say with this particular scenario. So now there's a particular type of review that's very I wouldn't say common, but it's very prominent, and it has to do a little bit with the amount of power the guests have with this review process, specifically within Airbnb and probably within every other two-sided marketplace as well, because the consumer has an immense amount of power. So there is such a thing as retaliation reviews in Airbnb. So retaliation reviews are basically a review in retaliation to a particular circumstance or a situation or whatever could have happened to this guest during the stay that did not go according to what they wanted. So, for example, let me give you a measly example. So if a light bulb went out, right, and you didn't change that light bulb during the reservation, and I've had this experience, right, and you didn't change that light bulb during the reservation, and they went out without that light bulb, and it was maybe a one of the light bulbs from the chandelier that I have, for example. That might be one of the reasons why people could start a dispute and provide a retaliation review. because maybe they say, oh, this is out and this was out and we couldn't see and whatever, and we want a refund. So, and you'd be surprised the amount of refund requests that come in because of something that you say, wait, this can be, I can resolve this right now, for example. So, mainly because people want a particular, they want a refund or they want a discount or they want free stuff, they sometimes come in and say, oh, you wouldn't want me to say this on the review or something like that. And that goes into the extortion policy on Airbnb, which we're going to discuss the three main policies on reviews on Airbnb. But some of these things do happen when people come in and say, oh yeah, this is wrong, this is bad, I don't like this, and whatever, right? So now let's move on to the Airbnb policies on reviews. So there's the review policy that just basically says that the reviews should be relevant. Reviews should reflect the actual experience that you had in the place. It shouldn't violate the content policy. So then you move into the content policy is that basically you can't spam, you can't spam, you can't scam, you can't promote another business or promote competition. So essentially those are basically content and review policy. Then we go into the higher level ones, which is the non-discriminatory policy. So that's pretty self-explanatory what they're trying to say with the non-discriminatory policy. And you also have the extortion policy.
Okay, so at the time of recording this video, I was doing the research and I noticed that the extortion policy is now included in a broader policy called Airbnb's the dispute moderation for reviews. So this is pretty good to bring up now that reviews can be removed from Airbnb, and this is particularly Airbnb's way to provide their parameters, and the rules on moderating between the two parties for any review removals and that sort of thing. So basically, they have these three main categories. So they're moderating for bias, for relevance, and for canceled reservations. So you'll see here in moderating for bias that there is extortion or incentivization here. So this is mainly what the old extortion policy had. So this is totally new. They revamped their policy, so it now hosts a little bit more on their moderation practices. So you can see for removal of reviews. So if it's in violation of the content policy, which is linked in the description, if it's in violation to the Airbnb overall review policy, if it's irrelevant, or if the review is biased, right? So the review can be biased if someone is extorting you, trying to get something out of you for that particular review, or incentivizing you to provide a review in exchange for something. So this is what it prohibits and what it does not. So there's also a little bit of extra jargon, kind of like trying to explain what are their intentions, what are their what's their thought process and point of view in this particular scenario. And they also added some conflict of interest and also competitor reviews, which was something that was vaguely talked on in the previous policies, but now it gets a little bit of a dedicated view in this dispute moderation policy. So moderating for relevance. It's basically if this person is providing feedback that is not relevant to you or your listing in their review, it's basically something that is not relevant to your listing, so it would be removed as well. So Here's examples of things that are irrelevant, and here's an example of things that are relevant. So if you notice here that the irrelevant one and the relevant one have this same sentence in common, but they mentioned that when they arrived at the listing, it was in complete disrepair, so that makes it relevant, right? Even though you have this really bad previous experience, which in some cases it gets to a point where it's a little bit ridiculous, and you can sort of question why, if it's something that has already provided a very bad experience to the guest, uh, why is it being let in the in your review, right? This prior negative experience is also influencing whatever their perception is going to be on your listing. Right now in their example, they're saying that they arrived and the listing was in complete disrepair, so that's going to be a negative experience all throughout. But if, for example, the unit is in perfect condition, but he already has, or she already has, this particular negative experience, and this negative perception of the city, the area, or whatever, when they're arriving, this may lead to a little bit tougher to handle guest, even though you did everything correctly in your unit. And here's an example of a host review towards a guest. So here, guest is such a liar. She's not a real doctor. And then notice this, right? This is the small, not really small, the pretty blatant, siding with guests that Airbnb has, because be it a two-sided marketplace, they normally tend to be more sided towards the consumer. So notice that here in the irrelevant one, this guest was such a liar, there was no way she's a real doctor. And then in the relevant one, right, there is no mention of these two sentences. It's the guest showed up late to check in, then yelled at me for not waking up fast enough to let her in. She was rude and easily annoyed for the entire reservation. I would hate to experience her bedside manner. So notice the difference between the two examples. One of them makes it irrelevant if there's no mention of the unit. But if there is a mention of the unit, even though there's an irrelevant mention of something that happened outside, it makes it relevant in Airbnb's eyes. And on the host side, it makes it irrelevant. There's no additional elements that you could add to these two sentences to make it relevant in their eyes. That's what I'm trying to get to. So, and then after that, moderating for canceled reservations. So I think this is a really bad idea, but they have it in their policy. Airbnb allows reviews for any reservation canceled after 12 a.m. on the day of check-in. So this is very so I believe this is a bad idea, because 12 a.m. on the day of check-in, it's probably a lot of hours before anyone's check-in. So if this person just cancels the reservation on the day of check-in, and they decide to, I don't know, let's put it 1 star because of that, whatever, then they can do so. Even though they they also keep a clause right here in cases where Airbnb can confirm that the review was left for a canceled reservation and the review contains information irrelevant to our community. Example, frustrations about flight cancellation, the review will be removed. So, but in the sense that this is pretty vague, I believe that some case managers may not see things in the same way, because it's not a standardized process. It's a pretty human process. So this is a bad idea in that sense, where if the case manager, even though the person never arrived to the unit, the person never checked into the unit, they decide to cancel within this time frame between 12 a.m. on the day of check-in till up until the hour of check-in, and they place in a review, any type of outside frustration or whatever, or even mention something about the unit, even though it's before the check-in time, it may probably not be removed if it mentions something about the unit. So that's why I think it's a pretty bad idea.
I'll also link the 4 policy links down below, and I know I said 3 at the beginning because the non-discriminatory policy doesn't really kick into effect a lot of the times. Not because the people aren't really all that discriminatory in the platform, but yeah, so it doesn't kick in a lot of the time. So I deemed it as not all that relevant in real life scenarios, but it's still there just in case you need it. So I'll link all 4 policies on the description so you can check them out. And yeah, so basically those are my main reasons why Airbnb reviews I would say are particularly helpful, but not necessarily 100% trustworthy. They depend on too many factors that are very, very independent between each person that's actually reviewing the property. So I would say just read all the reviews and also use your particular judgment to make the question of would this bother me or would this not bother me if it would have happened to me if I was there. So with that said, this will be the end of the video. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. If you want to hear more from me, feel free to subscribe. That would be great. I will try to post more regularly this type of content. And also follow me on social media. So if you follow me, if you wanted to connect me on LinkedIn, it would be Hospitality. Just search Hospitality on LinkedIn and connect with me there. And for Instagram, it would be Hospitality5. It should be around here. And that would be everything. Have a great day and see you in the next one.